got a little bit of a garbed response there from my friend, the lady at Global Telling, but I think we've got a pretty strong connection.
Her name's Greta, just in case you didn't know. Her name is Greta.
You? Is it really?
I mean, that's what we named
Greta
her.
was... Okay. Global Telling Greta.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, per every Sunday night, I've got something pre-written. If you'll indulge me, I will read it.
All right, go for it.
Now, everything I write has a title, but this time I'm going to say the title first. I don't always say the title. This one is called Born on the 6th of January. The Tom Cruise movie Born on the 4th of July shouldn't strike anyone as the kind of movie that would help military recruitment. The main character returns from his service in Vietnam to experience the worst of decadent 70s and 60s American society. Though a combat-injured vet, he is cruelly treated by the very same people whose freedoms he served to protect. Instead of being lauded for his sacrifice, he is chided, taunted, insulted, and accused of atrocities. He is war-wounded and a societal outcast. Worse, he is a societal outcast because he's war-wounded. The life portrayed in the movie isn't a happy one. It shows how a materialistic and self-centered society lost its ability to process complicated issues with nuance or compassion. Soldiers were part of that class of disposable human beings who did the rough work of safeguarding the nation's freedoms, far away and out of sight or understanding of the nation's affluent and well-connected youth. A wounded warrior was just one of those disposable humans who had yet to find his way to the waste can, like a crumpled piece of paper on the floor. But that soldier meant more than that. His very existence was a painful reminder that life isn't all weed smoking and lava land. To look on him was to feel the rebuke of one's own lack of courage, masculinity, and self-sacrifice. Fight and die, or almost die, for an ungrateful nation that will treat you like trash. The movie Born on the 4th of July did not goose recruitment like your average Michael Bay flick, but it brought attention to major issues. Say what you will about the bloodthirsty establishment and how they handled the war. The soldiers did not deserve the rebuke of unwashed stoners or wealthy kids. Thanks to the awareness raised by the movie, by the time 9/11 happened, we had already come to an unspoken agreement as a society. We can criticize the war all we want, but the soldiers who returned, especially the wounded, deserved respect and admiration. As a result of this attitude change, post 9/11, people wanted to serve. Post 9/11 years were unique in that it was a war that relied on an all-volunteer force. I was one of those who joined. At 30 years of age, I went to a Navy recruiter the very next day. I worked in Intel, which meant my work environment was multi-service. I worked next to airmen, soldiers, Marines, and other sailors. I talked to veteran warfighters from all branches and got a good sense of what it takes to serve from a lot of different perspectives. But let me tell you, you have no idea. I've worked with people who watched the person standing next to them get turned into soup. I've worked with people who spent whole weeks spotting from the same tiny piece of land under camouflage. People who had to stop a fire from reaching the torpedo bay. People who narrowly avoided being captured by the enemy. People who had to clear buildings that had terrorists hiding behind civilians. To say the least, it's hard work, and no amount of recognition can really do justice to the sacrifices we've endured. But thankfully, at the very least, the insults and rebukes have been kept to a minimum until recently. It should come as no surprise that the age of Biden is a throwback to the good old days of the disposable human of pre-born on the 4th of July America. As his disastrous Afghan pullout and subsequent utter lack of accountability would tell you. To underscore this transition from a society that respects service members to one that denigrates them, look at how the DOJ prosecutes veterans and how the D.C. judges have turned military service from a badge of honor to a mark of shame. Yep. It is in the courts that we see the return of the unwashed stoner and privileged rich kid in their contemporary incarnations as prosecutors and judges. Here, J6ers with military backgrounds are given special rebukes during sentencing. They are accused of being menaces to the very society they served and saved. They are told that their service stands against them, treating service as if it were no different from having a criminal record. Many of these defendants are even being told outright that were it not for their service, their sentences would be shorter. Though not as widespread as the soldier shaming of the 60s and 70s, in many respects this iteration is far worse because these recriminations come not from uninformed youths, but from official government channels, the same government that threw these men and women into the meat grinder in the first place. The treatment of these veterans is an example of the government's own bloody caprices. One minute they claim to want to provide for the best every medical and financial need. The next they claim the right to take all those same benefits away because of a protest and because of their political views. But it looks like the amnesiac establishment is on course to once again learn the hard lesson. Thanks to a real threat in the form of terrorism in the Middle East and terrorists crossing in through our own southern border by untold numbers, it seems that once again the call will go out for rough men capable of dirty deeds, real MAGA types. Save us, strong, masculine, military men. I can guess the response after 4 years of failing recruitment as the military focuses on pronouns and anti-racism. And after years of watching veterans getting flayed by government zealots, don't expect people to answer this call to arms. In a few short years, the Biden administration has managed to take military service and morale to lows not seen for over half a century. So in this new age of threats, this administration faces a crisis of its own making because it cannot answer the question, who now will man our walls? That's it.
You should be a writer.
Yeah.
That was beautiful.
When's the book coming out?
Thank you. It was heartfelt and it was meticulously researched by first and second hand accounts, not to mention articles. I remember from the very beginning of the January 6th stuff that people there were a lot of articles about some of the defendants and their military records, and the establishment regime media tried to make a big deal about the fact that there were a lot of former military among the January 6ers, and it turns out the actual percentage is about equal with regular American life. I'm not 100% on that, but the idea was that they were trying to start this narrative that military men are scary and bad, and it's so familiar to that whole thing where some guy comes home from Vietnam and he's in a wheelchair, and then some kid who's never had to work a day in their life screams at him that he killed babies by bayoneting them. It's a very similar attitude. I think it comes from that same wellspring of personal inadequacy at one's own lack of masculinity. I think this is just like that was the original time that happened, like in the 60s. That was basically the weak sort of ganging up on the strong. Because they could, this is how the weak react when they get a chance to take a bite out of someone that they, when they want to knock someone down a peg, they'll go for it. They'll definitely go for it, and you see that in a lot of these judicial sentencings and the way the prosecutors will kind of talk up how someone is scary because they have guns and camouflage gear. Standard issue or whatever.
Right.
So, that's for me. That's something that really hits home because I really feel like no one has a right to say something like that to someone. I mean, they already made their sacrifice. They've already gained their wounds, whether they be psychological or physical or whatever, trauma based or whatever. They have these wounds, and it's not for the judges to provide recriminations for them because of their military service. It's just those judges have no right to say that, and because they're doing that and they're doing it in this public forum, they're really gonna injure military recruitment because, I mean, just like in the 60s, you know, people did not want to serve an ungrateful nation, and that's gonna happen. That's gonna happen again.
Yeah.
And as a result, you're not gonna be able to brag about having an all-volunteer service to the next war that comes up. You know, mothers and fathers of children, especially the liberal ones, don't get mad. Don't get mad when they start doing the draft.
That's right.
I mean, 9/11 we had an all-volunteer force, and now they're just going to draft their kid, male or female, by the way, because you know diversity.
Right.
So that's how that's going to go. So thanks for doing this. All the military members who were involved in January 6th.
Yeah, Matt, I just want to
Doing wonders.
say this too, that, you know, Ashley did 4 tours of duty in the Middle East, and she was denied rendering of honors simply because she was at the Capitol on January 6th. And that's exactly what we see when we go in these
Right.
courtrooms. People are tried by the day on the calendar, just like Ashley was. And, you know, they're treated accordingly. And you're right, their military service is held against them. Any kind of service they did to this country, for this country, you know, Ronald McAbee, same thing. It's just a bore.
Oh yeah. And I honestly, unless you yourself have been in a similar situation, like you're standing next to someone talking to them and suddenly they explode into liquid, then you can't really talk to these people like that because you haven't experienced what they've experienced, and they carry those wounds forever. So don't pretend like suddenly, oh, this is the great leveler. It's like now I'm bigger and stronger than the big and strong man. No, you're still weak. You're still pathetic, and you're still you know, lacking any real accomplishment or any sense of real personal sacrifice or principle. Oh no, I'm getting upset.
I understand. It is very upsetting and it's ridiculous. I mean, you know, we see it over and over again in a lot of these trials and sentencings, and they use it against, they act as though your commitment to your country makes you more of a terrorist. Like that doesn't make any sense.
And I've never heard that in any kind of trial before. I don't hear that like Antifa trials or BLM trials. People don't talk about someone's former service because they happen to have served. And I know that there are far fewer former military that run in those types of circles. But I mean, statistically, there's got to be at least one.
Right.
Right. So I don't know. I think that instead of saying you're bad, especially because you served, maybe it's time for a little introspection on the other side. That's a horrible thing when you're dealing with leftists, is that they do not engage in any kind of introspection whatsoever. They never ask themselves that main question: are we the baddies? You need to. Everyone needs to ask themselves that question all the time. Like that's how you know. That's how you keep out of, you know, being the bad guy. Did you ask yourself, is this something a baddie would do? You know. And it's very clear to me.
You have 1 minute remaining.
No.
They're very hungry for power, and they see this as an opportunity to consolidate it, and they don't care how many people they hurt in the process.
That is absolutely right.
They don't care who they step on. to get where they're going.
They absolutely don't care who they step on to get where they're going.
That's right.
Yeah,
They
I
want
agree.
money and power.
All right, Matt. Well, before Greta gets us, I will let you go, but we will hear you at the anthem, and you should really think about writing a book of your own because you're a very well-written man.
All the way.
It's easier to sound like good writing when you can say it like that. If you can say it out loud. Yeah.
That's true too.
All right.
All right, we'll hear
It's a
you in a
little
bit.
performance aspect. All right. Hear you.
All right.
Or see you. Or be there. I'll be there.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, as you know, and when they're speaking, I don't speak.